Dear Editor, may I be permitted space in your paper to say some words of appreciation to the citizens of Nelson. While passing through your city, both my wife and myself were unfortunate enough to become victims of the influenza epidemic of 1918. I have been a city dweller for the greater portion of my life, where, I fear, one becomes callous to the sufferings of others. But I wish to say that the kindnesses we received in the city of Nelson have revived my faith in the inherent goodness of humanity, and in whatever land I may be destined to spend my days, I can never adequately express the appreciation I feel for the kind acts and generous deeds of the people of the city of Nelson. Yours is truly a city of kind hearts.
Part of the redevelopment of the hospital is going to de-emphasize the inpatient side of things. There won't be as much emphasis placed on acute inpatient care as there is on the walk-in, walk-out same-day patient who comes into the hospital. The care provided then will be very accessible to people in the area. They'll be able to walk in likely to the ground floor of the facility. At the moment, that's the planning, and access virtually any type of service: nutrition, counseling, daycare surgery, diabetic counseling, and many other of the kinds of services that now are provided on an inpatient basis will in fact be diverted to an ambulatory care system. That in itself will make the whole process of treating patients for specific illness much more efficient, because they won't be staying overnight, and we won't require the inpatient facilities to accommodate that. So that's one of the reasons that the hospital will not be growing in bed size. In fact, it may even reduce in bed size, because the requirement, the shift from inpatient acute care to outpatient care continuing, even though it'll be an aging population, the demand for inpatient services will be reduced. So the overall direction of the redevelopment program allows for that shift from inpatient care to outpatient care.
Nelson was truly a mining camp in the spring of 1893 with the discovery of the Silver King mine. At that time, a group of public-spirited people in Nelson decided there must be a hospital to treat the miners employed in hundreds in the surrounding district. The rough bunkhouses of the period provided no facilities for the sick and injured.
Well, my philosophy for community support is that we get what we deserve. We wouldn't have this hospital today unless a good many people had spent hours and hours of their own time without remuneration to give us what we have today. And it's going to be the same in the future. It's not a question of the prestige of being on the hospital board. It's a question of being prepared to spend a great deal of time and effort to convince the people of the community that this is our hospital and deserves their support.
In 1893, the first hospital society was incorporated, and a 10 to 12 bed hospital set up in a small frame building in what are now the grounds of the old brick hospital on High Street.
The doctors who are left here that were here when I came are Dr. Morrison and Dr. Smythe, both of who were a tower of strength and helped me through many, many difficult times. I really enjoyed myself in Nelson in medicine, and I wouldn't change that career for anything else.
In 1901, miners paid $1 per man per month, and this covered treatment for any sick or injured miners. and the hospital paid the train fare of miners returning to work after treatment.
I do recall a very, more or less an embarrassing situation. While we were still at the old hospital, and Honorable Eric Martin was the Minister of Health at the time, and he was making a tour of the hospital to make sure we needed a new one, you know. And I was given the privilege of escorting him around to showing him, and I was trying to show him all the bad areas of the hospital, you know, and where it just didn't function, and how little equipment we had and all this sort of thing. And we had an orderly that had a great sense of humor, and we also had a girl on our housekeeping staff, Georgina DiGirolamo, who was here for many, many years. And as I came around the corner with Honorable Martin, a cloth went flying past and just nipped the corner of my cap and just missed him. And here was Georgina throwing this at Bertie Pearson, the orderly, you know. This was just a little feud they had going all the time. And I was just mortified, really.
On October 14th, 1918, the new hospital, with a finished cost of $110,000, was opened by Dr. W.O. Rose, member of the Provincial Parliament and former mayor of Nelson in 1903, just in time for the influenza outbreak, which took the lives of many, including Mayor McCrory, Matron Sadie McCallum, and Sergeant McInnes.
On a single morning, we had a baby delivered at the front door in a taxi. We had another baby delivered at the back door. Simultaneously with this action, why, a lady jumped off the fire escape, and a gentleman patient decided that he was going to go home, and he just departed, tearing across Gyro Park, the tourist park. And the sight of this thing with a nurse who was became a supervisor, tearing along behind him. It's a memory it's going to last for a long time.
The hospital trained and graduated classes of nurses from 1919 to 1934. When the Hungry 30s descended, community sweepstakes were organized by the board, and in one instance, some $48,000 was raised for the hospital.
I was always very fortunate with the Ladies Auxiliary in Nelson being available to supply these instruments when I returned from my junkets. I well recall the first urological instruments they bought only cost $4,500. And when the fiber optics came out, we went from 25 candle power on the incandescent bulbs up to 1,250 candle power with the fiber optics, which made surgery so much easier.
By that time, the old brick hospital had become unusable, and money to pay salaries, buy equipment, and provide comfort for patients was scarce.
Our equipment was all very poor, and we just didn't have any money, or the hospital didn't have any more money to provide new equipment, and so we had to make do with the best we could. And our mattresses were in poor condition, and at times we would put pillows at the bottom to fill in where they were caved in and rather holey. And our operating rooms were very cold when the weather was cold because the heating system was inadequate. Couldn't drive heat up if there was a wind blowing especially. That applied even to some of the wards where we had patients. We had some 12-bed wards at the end of the building, and when the wind blew from the west, these were cold. We couldn't bathe patients. It was difficult even to carry out treatments on patients.
Yet, with all the deficiencies, there was always an atmosphere of cooperation and dedication. The patient was of the utmost importance, and the best possible care given, if indeed it meant working hours of overtime for which there was no compensation.
So Mr. Procter and I traveled to Saskatoon by train in those days. to corner the Minister of Health in the Beresborough Hotel in Saskatoon. We thought that we would make the situation a little more comfortable, so I went out and bought a bottle of whiskey. And we went up to his room about 10 o'clock at night, and we got very enthusiastic about what we wanted.
Very enthusiastic.
Of course. And the minister was very adamant that he would not approve the site, nor would he approve the 4th floor. However, the management of the hotel, about midnight, said that unless we calmed down, we would be ejected from the building. And the minister, of course, became very concerned, and I suggested to him that all we needed was approval of the site in the 4th floor, and we would leave immediately. He finally agreed to this, which is the story of how we got the 4th floor. Of course, they wouldn't let us finish it without his special permission.
Hospital accreditation, won in 1937, was rescinded in 1951. Mr. Hendricks, local garageman and member of the Provincial Parliament, was able to secure an amendment to the Provincial Waters Act, which allowed a hospital improvement district to be formed.
And we had to have a petition signed by every property owner in this whole area. And some of them lived in Sweden and all over the world, in fact. But we had to have a written petition from each one. And it took us 1 year, and we had the improvement district.